Good morning. My name is Victoria. Thank you for joining me for Sunday Morning Cafe and a Chapter. This morning, we're going to read the first part of the first chapter of Last Card to Elysian Fields, written by James Lee Burke. Chapter 1. The first week after Labor Day, after a summer of hot wind and drought that left the cane fields dust-blown and spiderwebbed with cracks, rain showers once more danced across the wetlands. The temperature dropped 20 degrees, and the sky turned the hard, flawless blue of an inverted ceramic bowl. In the evenings, I sat on the back steps of a rented shotgun house on Bayou Teche and watched the boats passing in the twilight and listened to the Sunset Limited blowing down the line. Just as the light went out of the sky, the moon would rise like an orange planet above the oaks that covered my rented backyard. Then I would go inside and fix supper for myself and eat alone at the kitchen table. But in my heart, the autumnal odor of gas on the wind, the golden dark green of trees, and the flame-lit edges of the leaves were less a sign of Indian summer than a prelude to winter rains and the short gray days of December and January, when smoke would plume from stubble fires in the cane fields and the sun would be only a yellow vapor in the west. Years ago, in both New Orleans and New Iberia, the tannic hint of winter and the amber cast of the shrinking days gave me the raison d'etre I needed to drink in any saloon that would allow me inside its doors. I was not one of those valiant alcoholic souls who tries to drink with a self-imposed discipline and a modicum of dignity either. I went at it full bore, knocking back beam or blackjack straight up in sawdust bars where I didn't have to make comparisons, with a long-necked jacks or regal on the side that would take away the aftertaste and fill my mouth with golden needles. Each time I tilted the shot glass to my lips, I saw in my mind's eye a simian figure feeding a fire inside a primeval cave, and I felt no regret that I shared his enterprise. Now I went to meetings and didn't drink anymore, but I had a way of putting myself inside bars, usually ones that took me back to the Louisiana in which I had grown up. One of my favorites of years past was Goldie Beerbaum's place on Magazine in New Orleans. A green colonnade extended over the sidewalk, and the rusted screen doors still had paint on them, the vague images and lettering of Depression-era coffee and bread advertisements. The lighting was bad, the wood floor scrubbed colorless with bleach, the railed bar interspersed with jars of pickles and hard-boiled eggs above, and cuspidors down below. And Goldie himself was a jewel out of the past, a 70-year-old flat-chested ex-prize fighter who had fought Cleveland Williams and Eddie Macon. It was night and raining hard on the colonnade and tin roof of the building. I sat at the far end of the bar, away from the door, with a demitasse of coffee and a saucer and tiny spoon in front of me. Through the front window, I could see Clete Purcell parked in his lavender Cadillac convertible, a fedora shadowing his face in the glow of the streetlight. A man came in and removed his raincoat and sat down on the other end of the bar. He was young, built like a weightlifter, whose physique was earned rather than created with steroids. He wore his brown hair shaved on the sides, with curls hanging down the back of his neck. His eyebrows were half moons, his face impish, cartoon-like, as though it were drawn with a charcoal pencil. Goldie poured him a shot and a draft chaser, then set the whiskey bottle back on the counter against the wall and pretended to read the newspaper. The man finished his drink and walked the length of the bar to the men's room and back. His eyes looked straight ahead and showed no interest in me as he passed. "That's the guy," Goldie said, leaning close to me. "You're sure? No mistake?" I said. "He comes in 3 nights a week for a shot and a beer, sometimes a catfish po' boy. I heard him talking about it on the payphone back there. Maybe he's not the guy who hurt your friend, but how many guys in New Orleans are going to be talking about breaking the spokes on a Catholic priest?" I heard the men's room door open again, and footsteps walked past me to the opposite end of the bar. Goldie's eyes became veiled, impossible to read. The top of his head looked like an alabaster bowling ball with blue lines in it. "I'm sorry about your wife. It was last year?" he said. I nodded. "It was lupus?" he said. "Yeah, that's right," I replied. "You doing all right?" "Sure," I said, avoiding his eyes. "Don't get in no trouble like we used to do in the old days." "Not a chance," I said. "Hey, my po' boy ready?" the man at the end of the bar asked. The man made a call on the payphone, then ate his sandwich and bounced pool balls off the rails on the pool table. The mirror behind the bar was oxidized and oily green and yellow, like the color of lubricant floating in water, and between the liquor bottles lined along the mirror, I could see the man looking at the back of my head. I turned on the bar stool and grinned at him. He waited for me to speak, but I didn't. "I know you?" he said. Maybe. I used to live in New Orleans. I don't anymore, I said. He spun the cue ball down the rail into the pocket, his eyes lowered. So you want to shoot some 9-ball? He said. I'd be poor competition. He didn't raise his eyes or look at me again. He finished his beer and sandwich at the bar, then put on his coat and stood at the screen door, looking at the mist blowing under the colonnade and at the cars passing in the neon-streaked wetness in front of Goldie's bar. Cleet Purcell fired up his Cadillac and rattled down the street, turning at the end of the block. The man with the impish face and curls that hung on the back of his neck stepped outside and breathed the air like a man out for a walk, then got into a Honda and drove up Magazine toward the Garden District. A moment later, Cleet Purcell pulled around the block and picked me up. Can you catch him? I asked. I don't have to. That's Gunnar Ardoin. He lives in a dump off Chupitolas, he said. Gunnar? He's a button man? No, he's been in 3 or 4 Fat Sammy Figurelli's porn films. He mules Crystal in the projects, too. Would he bust up a priest? I asked. Cleet looked massive behind the steering wheel, his upper arms like big curled hands inside his tropical shirt. His hair was sandy, cut short like a little boy's. A diagonal scar ran through his left eyebrow. Gunnar? He said. It doesn't sound like him, but a guy who performs oral sex for a hometown audience? Who knows? We caught up with a Honda at Napoleon Avenue, then followed it through a dilapidated neighborhood of narrow streets and shotgun houses to Chupitolas. The driver turned on a side street and parked under a live oak in front of a darkened cottage. He walked up a shell driveway and entered the back door with a key and turned on a light inside. Cleet circled the block, then parked 4 houses up the street from Gunnar Ardoin's place and cut the engine. He studied my face. You look a little wired, he said. Not me, I said. The rain on the windshield made rippling noises on his face and arms. I made my peace with NOPD, he said. Really? Most of the guys who did us dirt are gone. I let it be known I'm not in the OK Corral business anymore. It makes life a lot easier, he said. Through the overhang of the trees, I could see the Mississippi levee at the foot of the street and fog billowing up from the other side. Boat lights were shining inside the fog so that the fog looked like electrified steam rising off the water. Are you coming? I asked. He pulled an unlit cigarette from his mouth and threw it out the window. Why not? He said. We walked up Gunnar Ardoin's driveway, past a garbage can overflowing with shrimp husks. Banana trees grew against the side of the house, and the leaves were slick and green and denting in the rainwater that slid off the roof. I jerked the back screen off the latch and went into Gunnar Ardoin's kitchen. You beat up Catholic priests, do you? I said. What? He said, turning from the sink with a metal coffee pot in his hand. He wore drawstring, tin-colored workout pants and a ribbed undershirt. His skin was white, clean of jailhouse art, his underarms shaved. A weight set rested on the floor behind him. Lose the innocent monkey face, Gunnar. You used a steel pipe on a priest named Jimmie Dolan, Cleet said. Gunnar set the coffee pot down on the counter. He studied both of us briefly, then lowered his eyes and folded his arms on his chest, his back resting against the sink. His nipples looked like small brown dimes through the fabric of his undershirt. Do what you have to do, he said. Better rethink that statement, Cleet said. But Gunnar only stared at the floor, his elbows cupped in his palms. Cleet looked at me and raised his eyebrows. My name's Dave Robicheaux. I'm a homicide detective with the Iberia Parish Sheriff's Department, I said, opening my badge holder. But my visit here is personal. I didn't beat up a priest. You think I did? Then I'm probably in the shitter. I can't change that. He began picking at the calluses on his palm. You get that at a 12-step session up at Angola? Cleet asked. Gunnar Ardoin looked at nothing and suppressed a yawn. You raised Catholic? I said. He nodded without lifting his eyes. You're not bothered by somebody hospitalizing a priest? Breaking his bones? A decent man who never harmed anyone? I said. I don't know him. You say he's a good guy. Maybe he is. There's a lot of priests out there who are good guys, right? He said. Then, like all career recidivists and full-time smartasses, he couldn't resist the temptation to show his contempt for the world of normal people. He turned his face away from me, but I saw one eye glimmer with mirth. A grin tugged slightly at the corner of his mouth. Maybe they kept the altar boys away from him, he said. I stepped closer to him, my right hand balling, but Cleet pushed me aside. He picked up the metal coffee pot from the counter and smashed it almost flat against the side of Gunnar Ardoin's head, then threw him in a chair. Gunnar folded his arms across his chest, a torn grin on his mouth, blood trickling from his scalp. Have at it, fellows. I made both y'all back on Napoleon. I dialed 911 as soon as I came in. My lawyer loves guys like you, he said. Through the front window, I saw the emergency flasher on an NOPD cruiser pulled to the curb under the live oak that grew in Gunner Ardoin's front yard. A lone black female officer slipped her baton into the ring on her belt and walked uncertainly toward the gallery, her radio squawking incoherently in the rain. And that ends the first part of Chapter 1 of Last Car to Elysian Fields. This book is available to borrow as a print book, a book on CD, and an ebook. If you have any questions or need any assistance requesting materials, please call the North Versailles Library at 412-823-2222 or email us at nversailles@einetwork.net. Thank you for joining me and have a great day.